Hey y'all, it's Zoe here back at Nutrition Prep for Prep Note number 2, and I'm giving you the rest of my story on how I passed the CNS exam on the first try. So I wanted to kind of set a frame for you all. When I went to prepare to apply to take this exam, it had already been over a year since I had graduated from my nutrition master's program. So you can imagine, and I told y'all I spent that year after school working toward a health coach certification that I did not get. So that meant I spent most of my time not necessarily dedicated to building my nutrition resume, like specifically in nutrition. So with my health coaching, I was coaching clients on nutrition and lifestyle and wellness things, but it wasn't specifically catered to some of the things that we really like to focus on as nutritionists, like specifically our nutrition care process and things like that. Lots of things were similar, but there were some elements missing that I would need in order to better be prepared to sit for the CNS exam. But after talking to that potential CNS supervisor, I took her advice and I just went ahead and started completing the things I needed to complete for the application to sit for the test. So to open up the application, I told you all it was $100 for me. At the time of you watching this video, I believe it has gone up to $150. So after speaking with her, I went ahead and opened up my application, contacted my recommenders, and initiated that process. And so from the time that I opened up my application, which was February 18th, to the time I sat for my exam, which was June 21st, that was about 4 months, I believe, y'all. I'll put a correction if that's wrong, but it's February, March, April, May, June, yeah. So that was about 4 months. So from the time that I opened up my application to when I sat for the exam, it was about 4 months. So within that time, y'all, I began studying. Now, I have a notebook here where I helped to organize myself before I really got into the nitty-gritty of the content. And so I have written on here the date February 25th to 2025. So on this, I have written out the exam content outline, and there are some really special tips that I have for y'all when it comes to getting organized to study. And so that's in another video, y'all. But February 25th, 2025. And like I told y'all, I had to repent for my complaining because I was just a bit overwhelmed. They call it imposter syndrome, where like maybe you're, I don't know if it's like you feel like where you actually are more qualified or you are better off than what you think. And so had to get that straight, had to get a positive mindset. So I started getting myself organized on February 25th, 2025, making a note of how I'm going to prep. So again, I was scouring the internet, trying to see who had done it before me. I was in the Facebook group. I was reading the old post. Some of y'all like me, I type in keywords. I'm like, well, what did they do? Getting all the information and the advice I can. I went to the ANA YouTube page, which I'll link below, and they had, I believe it's called CNS Candidate Office Hours from 2024. So I went and watched that. I believe that was a little bit over an hour. I think it was broken up into parts 1 and 2. I went and watched that, got information from that just to try to figure out how I needed to frame my mind to prepare for this exam. And so I have another video that I'll make on resources that I recommend that you use to prepare for this test as well. So just to help us be organized. So that's what I did. And right off, I read through the content outline and I began reading something that they consider out of date now. It was called the CNS Primer. And again, I'm going to make a whole nother video dedicated to resources. And I began using some of the information that the potential CNS supervisor shared with me as well, which were some textbooks and things like that. And so I was able to begin reading up on the material as it correlated to the outline. So, for example, y'all, on the outline, let me get it. I had a slow, steady start, and it wasn't the most strategic, especially given the amount of time that I had to actually dedicate to study for this test. It wasn't the most strategic at first, but I was able to tighten it up as time went on. So if you look on the first page of the outline, so I'm right here in, y'all can see this date right here too, look, February 25th, 2025. And so this is the content outline in the back of the BCNS handbook, certifications handbook. And so I just went to domain 1 and I began crossing it off as I went. I don't suggest that as the most efficient way to study for this test, but I just began trying to get familiar with, you see right here, it says the digestive tract, and like reading up on that digestion absorption and kind of going through it that way. And that's what I began to do. And I began to just read through. They say it's out of date, and I'm not even sure if I can share this with you all. I will try to find out more information on that, put pressure on myself to dig into that a little bit, or I'll try to tell you where you can get it, where it's still accessible. But I just began reading and educating myself up on these things. Now, a lot of these topics we did go over in my nutrition master's program, so I also went to my old notes and tried to scour the information, but mind you, it's not organized the same way as it is on the outline. So that's kind of how I got my start. And then I still had life going on at the same time and still was trying to balance work as well. So I wasn't really dedicating like lots of hours each day to studying. I honestly was just trying to still get my life together and studied as much as I could each day. During those first 2 months of studying, I would say I would try to do anything where from anytime from, I would say maybe an hour to 4 hours a day, what I could fit in each day. So with my work schedule, that did work out for me, but I still wasn't accomplishing as much as I wish I would have within those first 2 months, just to be honest with you. Trying to get organized, being a little bit overwhelmed, and combating I gotta pass this test because it's expensive and I don't want to take this again. So, anywho, so starting February 25th, 2025, I just started, there were some free questions that you can take by this website called practicequiz.com, and I'll leave a link to that below. And I started on some of those practice quizzes. Like I said, I listened to CNS Candidate Office hours that are on the ANA YouTube page. I was taking notes, just trying to find out where can I get all this information from. I made a list of the resources I had access to use in order to study. So I made a list of those. And I began just kind of like diagramming out the information that they have in those textbooks that correlated to the content outline. Like, where can I get information on the digestive tract? And we're like, what textbook is that? Where can I get information on, vitamins and minerals? What's the best resource for that? And I would write that out. And so that's how I got my start. And of course I made an initial study plan, but I didn't really stick to that. And so where I really started to begin really making exponential progress in my studying was really about a month and 16 days before I sat for the exam. And so that's really when it kicked up a notch for me. And I don't know if it was the time pressure or I think my strategy kind of changed because I really began to focus on an element of the test that I believe helped me to really connect the dots in all of the domains. And again, I'm going to make another video for y'all on that. So at a month and 16 days, this was May 5th, 2025. And I have another paper that shows, if I can find that paper, I'll put a snippet of it up. I was actually using a social work study outline paper because someone else in my family was studying for an exam as well. And so I used a study outline I got from her where it helps you to break down where you're going to study and when you complete that topic area. So that kind of helped me along. But at a month and 16 days out, I really focused on a central element that's really, really important to the exam. And once I began to do that, it helped me to connect the dots in all of the other areas. And so, again, I'm going to make another video for you all on that. And I won't be telling you the questions I had on the exam or giving you examples or anything like that, but pointing you in the direction of good resources that can really help you to feel more prepared to sit for this test. And so I did a lot of content review, a lot of, anytime I did practice questions, what really helped me, and I got this tip from a podcast called the RD Exam Made Easy podcast by Jana Nickel. Excellent podcast. And I got this tip from her where she was saying when you go through your test questions or your practice questions, make sure that you understand what the question is saying. And if you don't know what a term is, or if you don't understand, what the question is asking, go and get more information on it. So if it's a term you don't understand, go look up that term and then understand how it relates to being a possible answer choice to the question. So at that point, that really helped me to frame my mind on how I should be approaching these questions on the test. So any practice questions I got just from Googling free questions, honestly, on the internet for the Certified Nutrition Specialist exam, or for something called the clinical Certified Clinical Nutritionist exam, there were test questions that may be helpful as well. But framing my mind in more of a mode to understand, as opposed to I've got to memorize. No. If you frame your mind to understand what the question is asking, to understand, the answer choices and the intent, behind the question, that will really help. So having a practitioner's mindset as you're going through the test questions and as you're studying will really help you. And that's what really helped me. And that's why I believe I was able to do, one of the reasons I was able to do well on this exam is using that strategy, as well as having a positive mindset. So shifting that mindset of being overwhelmed to, I can do this. And then also shifting my mind from thinking more of, sometimes, have you ever felt like more of a conqueror's mindset, as opposed to like, this test is bigger than me? No, this test is going to help me to get to where I'm trying to go. Does that make sense, y'all? Y'all ever felt like something was like a big, was like a boulder in your way, and it's like, it's really inflated and it looks really big, and then once you overcome the barrier, or you pretty much move it out your way, you realize it wasn't that big of a deal in the first place? Like the boulder was hollow on the inside and all you had to do was just push it. That's what this exam ended up being like for me. And so I take no credit for that, you all. I'm going to tell you always that I give all glory to God for helping me to exceed on this test and to pass it. And so my purpose in making these videos is to help you to develop your own strategy to take this exam so that you can ace it and pass it the first time. Okay? So all we're trying to do is get you to, pass. So that way you can go on to become the certified nutrition specialist that I know you can become and that you want to be. And so the test so that's pretty much it. At a month and 16 days out, my studying kicked up in high gear. Along up until that point, I was just kind of reading in textbooks and reading up on content, just reviewing things. But at a month and 16 days out, my review became a lot more targeted. And I believe this is really what helped me to be most successful on the exam. So I look forward to sharing with y'all. Oh, do y'all want to hear about test day? Okay, so let me tell y'all about my test day experience. Now, a month prior to sitting for the exam, what was that? May. A month prior to sitting for the exam, I registered with the testing center. where I was actually going to be taking the test. And so the first exam location I registered for, they actually ended up canceling that spot and told me that I had to reschedule for another place. And so I had to go on there and do that. So make sure throughout this time that you're really adept at checking your email and staying up to date on that. So that way you don't miss deadlines and cutoffs for, reschedules or rescheduling and things like that. So I had to schedule it again at another facility that was a little bit further away, but that was fine. I was prepared ahead of time. And so I got to the testing center, and when I got there, it was several other people there. And we were all taking different exams. And some of them were actually taking exams through another company, and so their check-in procedures were different than mine. So they had to take pictures when they got there. My procedure, as of the recording of this video, did not include all of that. All they required from me was a driver's license and my candidate letter because it had information I needed to be able to log in to take my test. So all of us were there for different exams, and the check-in procedure was different for each person. We did have to get metal detectored before the test. So that may or may not apply to some of y'all when y'all go to sit for your exam, but just so you're prepared. And so, yeah, that's what happened with that. It was a room. Every testing center is going to be set up different. Mine was a room with a set of computers on this side, a set of computers on this side, and like a little bit of an aisle. And we had dividers between us, so you couldn't really see the person next to you unless you ducked out and, looked or something like that. So it was pretty quiet. There were earplugs available. If that's a special request you have, you can always ask the testing center ahead of time if you need those, or if you need any accommodations during the time of your test. Make sure you make those arrangements ahead of time within the portal on the ANA website. In your candidate portal, there should be a place where you can submit information as it relates to accommodations if you need those for your exam. Now, the test itself is 200 questions, and you have 4 hours to take it. In my opinion, that is plenty of time. I was able to have enough time to go back and even review my answers for a lot of questions that I highlighted throughout the exam. So I believe it's a good amount of time. And one thing I will suggest to you is not to second guess yourself. During the time I was preparing to take the test, I really didn't put myself under time conditions, y'all. That may be something that you want to incorporate into your study plan, but I did not do that. I actually only ended up keeping time of my study questions was the day before the test, y'all, because I really just focused on understanding the content, and so it made when it came time to answer questions a lot easier for me. So I was able to do that quicker. Now, I do suggest that you do, take mock exams if you can, and take practice questions under timed conditions. I absolutely recommend that. I recommend that just as a safe gauge, but I did not. And I still was able to do very well on this exam. And so that's pretty much all I have left to share with y'all today. My test experience was great. If I had to do it over again, there's definitely changes I would make. And so I'm making these videos to share my experience with you all and give you my tips and some strategies that could be helpful for you on your CNS exam study journey. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Take a look at the checklist at the end of this video. And I hope to meet y'all back next time where I'll talk you through the application process to sit for the Certified Nutrition Specialist exam. Thank y'all so much for joining me. I hope y'all enjoy your day, your evening, your morning, your afternoon, whenever you're watching this. And I'll see y'all back here next time.